Thank you for those who joined us early. We're in for a fantastic treat today, but before we get on to proper introductions, we're going to have a little bit of housekeeping first. This might be many of your first experience with WebEx, and it does behave a lot like Zoom for those who might be more familiar with that, with a few little nuances and quirks to keep things interesting. Because while many of you may have Zoom fatigue, you probably don't have WebEx fatigue. So that's the fun angle on today. One other thing to note is that this event will be recorded and it will go on our blog afterwards. So if you want to share with any colleagues who haven't been able to tune in today, then please do so. We'll be sharing the details for that after the event. And first, some time for housekeeping.
Thank you, Laura. So as she just mentioned, we will cover a few things just to make sure you guys have a seamless experience on the webinar today. So if you are experiencing any issues with your connectivity or the audio, we do recommend calling in using your phone. Of course, if you're using your PC and you're not having any issues, that's absolutely fine as well. We would recommend kind of closing down any high bandwidth platforms that you may have in the home. So any Netflix, YouTube, we know everyone's at home at the moment, so that can impact the connection as well. And as Laura mentioned, we are recording the session, so if you do miss anything, we will be circulating the recording afterwards, and there will be time for questions at the end as well. And finally, so you unfortunately can't actually put your microphones on or your cameras, but please do utilize the chat box and the Q&A to kind of send in your comments, share your thoughts. We will be here on hand just kind of monitoring that as well. And other people can't see your comments, unfortunately, either. So when you are commenting, please do select all panelists. That's just to ensure that all the authors on the webinar today and the speakers are able to see your messages as well. So you can do that by just clicking on the drop-down next to 2 in the chat box or the Q&A box, and then selecting all panelists. And that's all from me. Oh, just one last final thing. If you do have any technical issues, do just drop me a message privately in the chat box, and I will aim to get back to you as well. Right, over to you, Nick.
Well, actually, I'll just give you a little bit of background. So, hello, I'm Laura Patey, Head of Open University Press, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's speakers who actually need very little introduction, I'm sure. In the last decade, the talk for writing approach has gone from strength to strength, and I'm not even going to try and hazard a guess about how many teachers Pi, Corker, and Julia Strong have worked with over this time. Both Pi and Julia are former teachers. They also have great experience in educational leadership and are famous in the education world for this transformational talk for writing approach. Pi has authored and edited an absolutely incredible number of books. I can't quite believe it, over 250 books. And Julia has also authored a number of best-selling titles, including, of course, the Talk for Writing books with Open University Press. Our best-selling resources, Talk for Writing across the curriculum, Talk for Writing in the early years, and Talk for Writing in secondary schools, have been updated and re-released this term, with the accompanying video material and additional resources now hosted online. For the shameless publisher plug, you can get 20% discount on these updated editions by adding the discount code OPENUP20 at checkout on our website. We'll also put that in the chat box. And for those of you who are familiar with their workshops, I know today's webinar promises to be as practical and engaging as usual. And we'll make sure that we leave time for Q&A at the end. So without any further ado, I shall now hand you over to the start of our show.
Great. So it's strange not being able to see everybody, but let's press on regardless. I'll imagine what this is scary. I'm going to imagine what you'll look like. Poor souls, most of you at school having a cup of tea at the end of the day. I'm sure it's been a hard day, but it's great to be with you and to link with you. And we're just going to do a little bit of a taster, really, looking at talk for writing, going from what we call faction, which is really mucking around with dragons and unicorns and giants and pretend stuff, and moving that into through non-fiction and then across curriculum. So, Julia, what's the first thing we've got to do?
Well, they've sort of done the first thing, because the first thing was for people to put into the chat box any difficulties, any particular problems they've had with writing across the curriculum. I mean, if anybody else wants to put something in now, that would be good. The only problem is none of you can see what anybody else is writing, which makes it a bit boring. So I must admit I'm tempted. We've got a few good things in there already. And a lot of people are just starting on the Talk for Writing road, so that gives us a sort of a bit of a hint that goodness knows about everybody else. But I think we might just press on.
Yeah, let's press on. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with something magical where you can make up the information. If you think about non-fiction, you've got two things. You've got the knowledge, got to know something or other. If they don't know anything, then the writing will be pretty poor. But you've also got how to express it. And in English, we teach children how to express it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with elves on this occasion, or sprites. It's invented, so the knowledge they can make up. So what we're concentrating on is getting the language patterns into their minds. And once they've got those language patterns, then we can apply it across the curriculum where the knowledge is going to be more important, but they will be revisiting and drawing on those language patterns. So we're just going to have some fun with elves and sprites. That's an indication that somebody needs to click a button. In pairs, complete an alphabet menu of elvish food. So this sort of activity is just a little fun warm-up. Well, obviously, it's, it's got the alphabet behind it, but you're also tuning them in to generating ideas. So, if I start us off, elves might well eat amazing avocados. Julia.
For bees, I think they would choose beetles, lightly fried.
Oh, I think they're going to go for crunchy carrots for C.
And then for D, they could have dragonflies. But what about letting people write their own names? Can you explain, Pi? This is good.
Okay, so this is quite fun, and we'll do it in the chat. So I am Pi Corbett, PC. So I've got to make up an elvish food going PC, so I'm going to go for pink carrots. Been a bit lazy there. I didn't think of anything else. What would you have for JS, for Julia Strong?
Oh, dear. Juicy scrumptious, which I know is two things that can't go together, but I've decided that they can.
Well, it was all right for Julie Andrews in whatever film it is. So I'm writing in. So in the chat, folks, if I give us, let's say half a minute. We got somebody. So Claire's come in with langoustine boiled. I'm absolutely loving your langoustine. Elegant courgettes from Erica. It's sounding like a good menu, actually, so far. Squidgy cream cheese from Sandra Cunningham. Excellent stuff. So, eggs mashed.
Somebody once thought my name actually was Jubilee Stout, because there was one of those things just in the university room I was in. So you never know, you might turn into eggs mashed.
We've got banana waffles, minty pepperoni, luscious rhubarb, smelly bananas, PC. I've got to think of something. I've got to think of these carrots. Purple.
Courgette.
Purple courgettes. It's a bit boring, actually.
It is, actually, yes. Yeah. Crostini.
Yes. Crostini. Mushy marrows.
Well, I reckon people can see by now that this is a game that the kids would love.
Yeah, get them in pairs. You can do it as a race, all sorts of possibilities. And in groups, let's say they call 2s and 3s, they can write a whole alphabet and illustrate it a little bit. And they are learning the alphabet, but also beginning to have fun. They're generating ideas, they're thinking creatively. Shall we move on? Because I think we've got the idea of that one. Thanks for jumping in, everyone.
But it's a very, very good starter, isn't it, that? Just to warm up the imagination.
You want at the beginning of the lesson to get everybody involved, everybody going. So now we're going to do something a bit more serious. We are working on explanation text. So as ever, we do need to be practicing the grammar that we're going to need when we come to do our writing. So we're going to start the focus way with because and so or so that. So what I have to do, it's the old game, can you think of a way to cross a river, an imaginative way to cross a river? Oh, so to cross the river, if I do the because one, to cross the river, the elf could hitch a ride on a hot air balloon, because hot air balloons will easily be able to travel across any river.
Well, I think I'll say that I, as an elf, to cross the river, I would wait for a windy day, because then if there was a leaf passing, I could climb on the leaf and I could be taken across the river by the leaf.
Okay, so to cross the river, I'm going to hire, my elf is going to hire a pogo stick, because with a very energetic jump and a rather small river, we could bound across. And so on and so forth. And I think, children could have great fun with it. And it might be nice to see a few in the chat box, so that we can they can be shared with you later as some natty ideas. So that's all about linking the grammar, looking through your model text and thinking, well, they're going to need for explanation words like because, so, consequently, etc. Therefore, we need to practice them. And we start by practicing them orally, so we get our tongues around how those sentences are said, and then we'll practice them in writing. And if we do it in a playful way, the children, it's sort of sneaky grammar, really, isn't it? They don't really realise they're learning, but they are. Okay, on we go, Nick. And with the sneaky grammar, because is one of those glorious things technically known as subordinating conjunction. It spins your sentences round, and you can't do complex sentences without some of these things. And so it's that moving the children on from compound sentences into complex sentences. So it can be great fun, but also extremely useful. On we go. Okay, now we got the interview. But we've gone from 2 to about half a dozen, 6, 7, 8 or whatever it is. You'd build it up a bit more slowly. But this is a nice one to do. Julia, are you going to be the elf? Or no, I'm afraid you have been appointed elf of the day, elf of the day. So I'm going to interview you, okay? So our viewers are very interested in why elves live in trees. So could you explain? Elves live in trees because they are very often attacked by cats and dogs. Because they are living up the tree, the dogs and cats find it very hard to attack them. So consequently, that provides you with a sense of security. Would that be so? Indeed, it does. This results in. Right. So some people, in fact, a lot of people have said they're scared of elves. Now, you look to me rather small and insignificant. So I'd like to know why it possibly is that people are scared of you. Because elves are able to give wishes, and very often will be mischievous. And they can transform people into toads. This results in fear spreading in the local population. So could this be an explanation for why elves are so shy? Because you're really rather evil and you're hiding away from people like me who might want to come and take my vengeance out on you. Elves are particularly shy because they have often been captured and put in elvish zoos and used in rather strange elvish circles. Therefore, they like to hide away. I think that thing with kids saying, therefore, and if you're working on this sort of language, remember to do it at other times of the day. Get that stuff on the wall, but you've got to keep modelling it and getting them saying it. It looks as if it's going to rain, therefore, we will probably be inside. The more they hear it, the more they say it, the more likely they are to be able to successfully write it. And don't be afraid of recasting if the standard English isn't quite right. Just recast it for them and say, oh, that's a difficult one. Come on, let's all say it together. Okay, I feel like Bruce Forsyth. Good game.
And I don't think we can overemphasize the importance of doing this, and especially the children using the language. Because as a secondary teacher, I can remember having year 7 children who couldn't use these words because they had, I'm not talking about people who've come from another country, English is an addition, I'm talking about homegrown English kids who couldn't use all these basic joining words because they just hadn't been sort of drilled in it. And, you know, nobody at home tends to use explanation very well. So if we don't do it in school, the children are not liable to learn that really important thing about explaining yourself. So onwards, I think, Pi.
Yeah, onwards.
Ah, right. Now, here we've got the beginning of our text map for our model text. Now, this is completely ludicrous because we can't see any of you, and we were going to try and teach you how to do this, but I suppose all I can do in the circumstances is teach Pi, because I haven't told Pi what I was going to do with this. So, Pi, I'm about to wave my arms and things, and then all of you who we cannot see, you could try waving your arms in front of your screens in the same way as we're doing. So we've got a heading there, which is basically, you know, why are elves so rare? So I think what I'll do for that, always for why, it's the tapping the head. So, okay, so why
are elves so rare?
So rare. So I think with the elves, I'm going to have a sort of silly hat on, so that's what I've done with that. And so rare, just a gesture. So here we go, everybody together, not that we can know if you're doing it. So, why are elves so rare? Rare. And then we come on to the first paragraph, and so it begins with, it's a well-known fact. Now, this is a sort of bossy way of telling people, you know, everybody knows this. So I think a gesture like that, like, it's a well-known fact. So we try that. It's a well-known fact that elves lived happily in woods and forests. Now, you have to be careful with woods and forests, because I can remember seeing Pi years ago doing this, making it like a shapely lady. So if you can make your tree look a little bit sort of vague and woolly, that would do it. But you get the idea. So you've got to come up with very simple gestures and very simple drawings. As you can see, I haven't done a drawing for every single word, and we're not going to have gestures. So shall we just take it from the top, Pi, rather than do all of this, just to see if we've learnt that little bit. Nick, I can see you're dying to join in. So here we go. So, why are elves so rare? It's a well-known fact that elves once lived happily in woods and forests. Okay, so you get the idea. Stop it, Corwith. I saw you trying to come in there with your well-known gestures. Anyway, so you get the idea. So I think we're going to move on, because when you can't see anybody, it always feels moderately mad doing this, but this is taking it to a new level of complete and utter surrealism. So let's move on.
Now, because I think that we've got the model text here, and I think we all know that if you want children to write piece of persuasion or whatever type of writing it is, there has to be a model text. You can't do it in any other way. If you want to learn German, you have to have some German to be working from. You have to hear it and read it and have a go at saying it. It's basic language learning. So this is the model text, why are elves so rare? And so I'm going to read this through, aren't I, Julie?
Yes.
Is there an activity that goes with it?
Yes, the idea is that we want you to be thinking about, why has Pi written it in this way? What are the key features that are going to be useful for the children in having a text like this and internalising it?
Are they spotting language features?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what you're looking for is the transferable ones. Some of them will be explanatory bits of language. Others will be sort of fairly generic, like, it is a well-known fact that. That one is going to be handy for virtually any type of non-fiction. This is about acquiring a repertoire. Some of them are generic and can apply to many different types of non-fiction. Others will be very much focused on the causal language. Here we go. I'll read it through, and if you spot one, jot it down in the chat. It is a well-known fact that elves once lived happily in woods and forests. They were often seen, and most families would have a few elves living in their gardens. So, why are they now almost extinct? And one of the ones I noticed in that, which some people won't necessarily have picked up on, is that word most. And of course, in non-fiction, we're generalizing. We're not talking about Frank the elf. We're talking about elves in general. So we're going to need those what we call generalizers, words like most, many, some, a few, the majority. Those are going to be very handy to us and will be very useful in most types of non-fiction. I'll carry on, see if you can spot any others. We've got somebody there, Claire, thank you, jotting down the rhetorical question, which is such a handy feature in fiction or non-fiction. Experts believe that the main reason is the increase in human population. Elves had to flee remote forests because towns and cities became too large, and so many trees were destroyed. So we've got a few causal ones there, but we've also got the main reason. That's a causal one, I suppose, as well. Yeah. On we go. Unfortunately, the spread of housing and building of roads meant that elves had fewer and fewer places to live. Trees are not only vital as a habitat for elves, but also provide their main source of green food. As forests were destroyed, elves had fewer places to live, caused by the steady rise in human population. It is this lack of forest habitation that led to their final demise. As more and more forests and wooded areas have been destroyed, elves could no longer find enough food or places to live. So, that is why, over the years, sightings of elves have become increasingly rare and only confined to remote places where very few humans exist. Currently, no one knows if they're totally extinct. We can only hope that a few have survived.
Right, we've got a number of things in the chat box, including habitat, technical language, and of course there is some technical language here that you could use for any animal about where it lives. So that word can move from this sort of faction into real non-fiction. Somebody else has also mentioned the fronted adverbial. Now, if you look at that, unfortunately, or the so, and they've got the commas after them, we're doing material today from the Red Book. I'm going to hold it up and sort of wave it. And it started off its life as a blue book. And when we edited this for the new version, I was entertained to find that it was full of buckets and buckets and buckets and buckets of fronted adverbials that we had failed to put commas after. Obviously, as it were, trends in what we're supposed to be teaching shift. But you will now find that every comma is there. And of course, it's really important that we help the children, automatically put these in, because it's a bit mad, in all honesty, referring to them as fronted adverbials. It's a very strange thing to say. But they've got to get this idea that if there's bits of information that sort of introduce what's going to be said, but that are not the actual meat of the sentence, then you separate it off with that little comma. So, unfortunately, and so. And if we go on to the next slide, Nick, I've done a bit of colour coding here. So the purpley ones are the ones that join things together or introduce things, and there's lots of connecting phrases there, and they're pretty useful for any sort of text. And then you've got the green ones, that's just sort of generic stuff that we could steal if we were going to do something about a different sort of animal or creature. Things like not only vital as a habitat for, we could put elves in there, replace elves with cattle or sheep or whatever it was. And Pa, you'd probably like to comment on a few things there.
Yeah, I think that it's a sort of revelation, really, isn't it? That you've got the overall structure that you have to get right to introduce a text to the reader, to round it off at the end, and then get different sections on different aspects. So you've got the big structure, and then you've got the smaller structure, more at sentence level, and extracting that grammar out and practice, so that they can use it, they can understand it, and also they have knowledge about it as well. So we're building grammatical skill as well as grammatical knowledge, and of course those things can be deployed to improve the quality of the writing.
Remember, if I read the coloured stuff in the first paragraph, can you put in a different animal and fill in the gaps, the black text? Let's have a go.
Well, it's a well-known fact that golden eagles once lived...
So I'm the coloured, you're the golden eagle, so it's a well-known fact that golden eagles once lived...
across England.
They were often seen...
and almost everyone who lived in mountainous regions would know them.
So why are they now almost extinct? Now, we hadn't practiced that, you can tell, but immediately I could fit in the text. And if you can go through your stuff, and that's the whole idea of it. Once you've highlighted your key generic stuff, including all those joining together and introducing ones, you ought to be able to put in any other topic that is similar and just go and talk the text. And that gets the pattern of language, the transferable text, into the children's head. The text they can recycle, the text they can nick. That's why we have a magpie.
Okay, yeah, like that. Thanks for springing that on me. Okay, on we go.
Well, it has to be some torture pie, come on.
Okay.
Yeah,
we got the boxing up here. This is very much about learning the underlying pattern of this form of explanation. So what they are learning, they're not learning anything about elves, that's irrelevant. What we're interested in is them using explanatory language and being able to organise a text so that they can write with some confidence. So, Julia, are you able to type into this? Or?
Well, Nick can. He's looking a bit, no, he can't. No, so give up on this. We'll have to picture what Pi says being written down.
Okay, so in the underlying structure, and do it with the children. Make the children think and problem solve and discuss it with you. After a bit, they can box up almost any text themselves pretty efficiently. And then when you're teaching writing, you can say, right, we're going to be doing a discussion text. Quick on your mini whiteboards, box it up, because they should, by the end of Key Stage 2, know discussion text is introduce to the reader what we're discussing, reasons for, reasons against, and summarise my viewpoint with some justification. They should know that. That is the English knowledge. So what we got here, Julia, is we got an opening which introduces what we are discussing, what we are about to explain and why.
Yep.
Then we go to the main reason.
Yep.
And then in the third big chunk, we get more reasons, and it tends to be how one thing led to another, which caused another, which caused another. So they sort of pile up on each other, and they've got a nice rounding off bit at the end, which looks forwards. We only hope a few have survived. So there's some sort of commentary on the whole thing at the end.
Yeah, and the beauty of boxing up cannot be overemphasized. I've had so many children say to me that realizing that you can box up any text and sort your ideas out and plan them has saved them from the blank page syndrome, and it's just wonderful. And it's all very, very clearly explained in Talk for Writing across the curriculum. So I'm sorry this platform didn't allow us to write as we go along. We're used to having a platform that can do that. But on we go.
And of course, that boxing up then becomes their plan.
Yes.
Then they can fill in their own ideas on the planner using bullet points, and they're away. So on we go, Nick.
And we're going to do that later on with a bit of science, with any luck.
Now, that boxing up is the big pattern. This is the smaller bits. So isolating out some of those key bits that you will have already picked up on, such as the technical language, sticking with the present tense, those sentence signposts, making sure you've got an introductory sentence to each paragraph which explains what the paragraph is about, which is your topic sentence. What you can see here is that both the boxing up and the toolkit can be pitched at different levels, if you like. It can be quite sophisticated, obviously, for Year 6. But if you're down in Year 2 or Year 3, it'll be less sophisticated. But what we're trying to get is cumulative learning. So each year they do some work on explanatory text. And when they get to Year 6, they are very familiar with it.
Right, onwards, Nick, onwards. Yes. Now, it's probably not worth doing it in the chat box, given the situation that we're in. So maybe we can just do it orally. But this one works incredibly well. You just come up with some sort of situation that all children will be familiar in your school. So if your school has a uniform, then it could be about not wearing the correct uniform, or it might be about being late for school. One child has to be the teacher and work out a reply, and the other one has to be the pupil who has all these stupid reasons about why they're always late. Right, I'm going to do one for I'm going to put Pi in the doc here. I'm the teacher, he's the pupil. So, Mr. Corbett, why are you always late to Zoom meetings?
Oh, well. As you know, my computer is often on the blink. Consequently, I arrive late for Zoom meetings.
So have you never tried to mend your computer?
I took it to a local computer whisperer who managed to dunk it into a large vat of boiling oil. This resulted in computer death.
All right. Okay, you get the idea. So you're allowing the children to have lots of fun using these words, but they've got to use more than so, and because they've got to move on to the consequently, this causes the reason that this results in, and so on. So they're using the full gamut of them, so they've really got the language of explanation on the tip of their tongue. Onwards, Nick. I think we're going to miss this one out in the circumstances, Nick.
Okay.
Right, now we've now come on to the tricky stuff, which is where we're starting to move into how you move from faction, where you can make it up by the yard, into actual facts about, sort of real things. So we picked on dinosaurs because obviously all children seem to be interested in dinosaurs. And here we're coming back to the boxing up. So if you remember previously, we would have had introduce the topic and a key theory, explain the key theory, the related reasons this led to and so on, and round it off. So we've got exactly the same underpinning pattern as we had for the elf, and now we've got the planner for dinosaurs. Now, I could have written in my planner, or I could do little drawings. I quite like doing the little drawings, because then as a class, we can talk through the text before I try to do the shared writing. But I wanted to ask Pi a question. Pi, why is it a good idea to have a planner with the key information that you're going to be writing about for the dinosaurs?
Well, when you're doing shared writing, and I've seen this a number of times, people doing shared writing, because they've forgotten to have a planner, then almost immediately the whole thing goes astray. If you've got a planner, it makes life much easier because you can literally model how you go from the plan, which is up on the wall, the class plan, into the writing. And you need never fear because your next bit is on the plan. And my guess is what you've got there is it's going to be something like, it is a well-known fact that dinosaurs once roamed the planet. We could vary that a little bit. I've just busked off the back of the model we were doing with elves or whatever it was. So I could say, have you ever wondered why dinosaurs are extinct? It is acknowledged by all archaeologists and biologists that dinosaurs once roamed across the whole of the planet, etc. So we can either stick closely to the original, which you would do with less confident and younger writers, or we can just take the idea of introducing the explanation to our reader and drawing widely on our reading. But the planner is essential if you're doing shared writing, or you're going to get lost. And also, you're not showing the children how to basically go from a plan into the writing.
Yes, and of course, it's vital for anything that you're doing. It'll be vital for fiction, vital for faction, and it's even more vital when you're dealing with actual facts, because otherwise you'll suddenly start thinking, I wonder if the dinosaurs did die out 65 million years ago, or was it 70 million, or don't I know anything at all? And panic sets in. So absolutely crucial. Can we move on, Nick?
Yeah, and of course, the research they do will then go into the planner, won't it? We'll give them their key facts and main ideas. Those are bullet pointed up on the planner. And then if you've already got it as a well-known fact, at least everybody in the room can write something, which is the idea that we build confidence and build up that repertoire as they go along.
And because we're short for time, we're not actually going to do any shared writing with you, but there's lots of great film clips in the book, and I can't overemphasize how useful it is to sit on your own watching those film clips and think about what do I do that's like this that's good and what isn't. And one thing I can tell you is Pi makes it look easy, but Pi prepares like hell for his shared writing. He's always got another version that he's written like the night before, and he's not looking at it, but it's in his head. And that's absolutely crucial, because if you try and wing it, it really, really shows, because he knows exactly what he's trying to teach. So you can see here, we've done our shared writing, we've color-coded it, and we couldn't do too much with another creature. But let's try again. I'm going to throw this at Pi, because it's weird talking to somebody when we've no idea there's anybody else out there. It's only me and Pi and maybe Nick, as far as I can see. So let's just try this with what's died out altogether apart from dinosaurs. Name me something.
Dodo's died out.
I think so, yeah. Okay, so let's have a go. So all you've got to say is dodo. Let's see if it works. It is a well-known fact that dodos, now let's see if the fact's right, once lived on every continent. I haven't any idea. Did they live on every continent?
I don't think they did. That's
we'll look it up. We'll look it up. So if we're going to do shared writing on dodos, we look it up. So why did they become extinct? There are several explanations. Here we go. But the one which most experts say, well, there probably will be several explanations, has the most evidence supported, and it certainly won't be the asteroid theory. It'll probably be something else. But you see what I mean? You can recycle an awful lot of the text, but you've got to check your facts. Right, on we go. Right, now we've moved into the real world of facts. This is year 1, Selby Primary. They were sensible enough not to pitch this as explanation. They've just gone for facts. And so we've got here a model text. You can see that model text. You can read it to yourselves. So I'm not going to go through it, but you can see it very, very clearly. Nick, can we have the next slide? Now, they turned their model text with the help of the children. They turned it all into images. So here we have the last 4 paragraphs. We've got the text maps. Absolutely marvellous. And you can see what it's, without the thing in front of you, you know what the words are. I'm tempted to Pi, do you want to have a go at saying what one is off the top of your head or not?
On the right-hand side, have we got 7 planets?
I reckon we have, yeah. There are 7 planets. And there's something about the universe, yes?
Oh, yes, the universe, yeah. Planets are part of the universe.
The universe is ginormous, is that? I don't know if it's ginormous.
It's got to be something like that. It's not going to be as big as an elephant, is it?
No, it's going to be slightly bigger. And, millions and millions of stars or something like that. Okay, so they've done their pictures. Are you cheating, Nick, and taking us back? The solar system is part of the universe. The universe is huge, so the elephant is huge. It contains billions of stars and planets. Okay, move on to not the next slide, but the next one. Now, here we have back onto the pictures. Yes. Here, the school sent the text maps home, not the words, but the text maps with the children, and the children had to practice them at home, and they asked the parents just to give them photographs about whether it worked or not. Now, look at those photographs. Absolute bliss. And so here is a child thrilled at the fact that he can do it, and he can actually sort of explain, well, not explain, but he can state facts about the universe. But we're focusing on explanation. So let's move on. Nick, to the next one. Now, hopefully this is going to work, though I have my doubts. This is a film, and it's a film showing how another of the Talk for Writing schools helps the children learn the language of what they're going to be focusing on in science. And later on, there'll be an investigation related to this. So this is on invertebrates. As you're watching it, and it would be nice if you could put comments in the chat box, what is good about the way this teacher is teaching vocabulary? So, is it going to work, Nick?
Okay, just quickly, due to the limitations of this platform, the way we're going to do this is Afzana has the link to a YouTube clip. So she's going to pop that in the chat for everybody to see. And then if you click on that, it should just take you onto YouTube to watch the clip. It's about 3 minutes long. And then we'll all come back together. I think I can see the link's just gone in there from Afzana. So give that a click. And then come back when you've watched it. And we'll pop any thoughts in the chat. And we'll have a little bit of a chat about it from there. Okay?
Are we ready to come back?
I think just about. It feels like a very long time, doesn't it? 3 minutes when you're sat in silence.
Yeah.
Hopefully other people will just be finishing off the clip around now from when it went in. So.
Well,
yeah.
the thing is, we've got no way of knowing, have we? So me and Pike continue our private conversation.
So yeah, pop something in. If you saw the clip, just pop. I saw the clip in the chat or something, and then at least we know that's worked, and we're not talking about something. If you haven't seen the clip, Julie will now describe it. Maybe.
I saw the clip. Oh, thank you, Sophie. I love you.
Okay.
Communication from the world outside. Okay, let's. Hopefully, you really enjoyed that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody doing a better job of helping children actually come to terms with the key thing. Now, if we'd have had a normal chat box, we could all look to what everybody had written, and you could have seen people would have written down things like, you know, it's the actions that are helping them understand the words, and they've always been told how to explain them. And of course, when the little girl Fatima doesn't quite get exoskeleton right, the teacher has the wit to say, well, it could be, and move on to somebody else to explain. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my timer, bad timer, telling me the egg is ready. But anyway, there we go. You know, it's just so simple and so good. If we move on, Nick. So the children have got the vocabulary, but of course there's more than just those sorts of technical words. There's the key words of investigation, and we're going to need actions for that. We're going to need symbols for that. And here we can see as children at another school at Selby, and here they are with their key actions to go with learning about investigations. So there's some great ones there. Perhaps the trickiest is hypothesis, and I won't go into hypothesis now, but it's safer to use the word prediction for what they're thinking is going to happen, and then they investigate a particular hypothesis. On we go.
That's worth pointing out that that's year one. So
Yep.
The idea is we teach them something very simple, because when you look at a subject, each subject has its own sort of particular technical words, but it also has common transferable words. So a word like investigate, you're always going to need in science. So they start, I can't remember how many it was, but let's say it was 10 core words that are going to be important. So they start with 10 in year one, and then they build on it so that by the time they keep coming back to it, but add on as well. So it becomes increasingly sophisticated. So when they get to year 6, these kids are very, very articulate. The fact they come from a poor background doesn't matter. They've been cumulatively taught the language of science. I love this next one, Julia, because it's bringing together the actions and the image and the language that we need in order to be able to talk and write about any investigation we're doing. So
yes, I obviously, in these ghastly circumstances, I would like to have taught you how to do a little bit at the beginning of this. I mean, Pi and I can probably try together, Nick can join in just for the sheer hell of it. But it's basically, the opening line is going to be this: I am investigating, my prediction, what I think will happen. So I start that again. So my prediction, what I think will happen, is that exercise will make the heartbeat faster because, and so on. Now I seem to have mucked that. What have I done? Sorry, I'll start again. Pretend you didn't see any of that.
I'm investigating what happens to my heart rate when I exercise?
Yes, I was right when I started, not wrong. I'll start again. So I'm investigating what happens to my heart when I take exercise, and then we get going. So my prediction, what I think will happen, that exercise will make the heart beat faster because, and I make a big deal about because that's a key word, because the heart has to pump faster to enable me to do the exercise. So that's how it goes. Interesting, I used to have lots of words in this thing, and I found it's actually easier to remember it without any words, because somehow the words put you off, but if it's pure image, you can just go with it. I think it was the lunacy of today that put me off at the beginning of that. But normally, you can just remember this one. Now, we're going to really finish on this in some sort of way. So if you move on to the next one. Now, normally we would have gone through this and you would have boxed it up with us, but we can't do that. But we're going to go for the structure. Well, underpinning structure is going to be, well, Pi, what's happening in the first paragraph?
Okay, so the first one introduces the reader to what we are investigating. So that will, whatever investigation we're writing about, whether we are doing O-level, GCSE, A-level, or a PhD, you need an introduction that tells you what you're about to investigate. So that's the first one. The second one is the prediction, and later on that becomes a hypothesis, doesn't it?
Well, the prediction is what you're thinking, and you are testing a hypothesis.
Okay, and then we get the variables, considering comparing at least two variables, and then finally the whole business of making the test fair.
Right, so we've boxed it up, and we can box up any investigation into this sort of way. Next slide, Nick. And we would analyse it again and find out the generic things. And we're going to use the green and the purple later on, so you can see that the generic text is in green, and within that generic text, we've brought out the signposts. So these are the key things, and we're going to come back to this, and this is, as it were, this is I rest my case about the power of Talk for Writing to help you across the curriculum, and hopefully we'll be able to prove it with not so easy today on a system that doesn't allow proper interaction. Nick, can we have the next slide?
Yeah, just quickly, Julia. So would you give them the boxes here? How would people do that? Would you give them that as the planner and then get them to write their bits in the box?
If I was doing it with a class, I'd have the text up, say, on screen. On my start, I'd have boxed the thing. I'd have had some boxing up, and then I'd ask them what would we have as the headings. You know, I wouldn't normally present it like this. It's the limitations.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. Right, so here we've got a planner. Now, again, we were going to write in this in front of you. And what Pi was going to ask me what we're going to investigate. So I'll have to talk to myself and answer my own questions, because what else can you do? I could do a Birmingham accent because that's where I come from, but I won't do that to try and make it seem like two people. So what is being investigated? Well, I'm going to investigate that terribly simple thing, because I'm not a scientist. I'm going to investigate whether plants die if they're not watered, right? So my best guess, my prediction that I would write in here is that if they're not watered, they die. And then I've got to worry about my variables. Well, for my variables, I suppose I've got to make certain that I've got this group of plants and that some are watered and some aren't. That's going to be basically what's variable. And if I'm going to make it fair, everything else has got to be similar. So the plants have got to be equal condition in the same sort of place. And I suppose we're going to be looking at them for the same amount of time. Okay, can we move on, Nick, and see if it works? So, Pi, this is the easy bit for you. All you've got to do is to read the text and pause when it comes to ... and I'll see if I can fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and it's worth saying, of course, because they've mapped it and learned it, the children actually know this orally.
Yes.
It's an amazing thing. They can just stand there and say, I'm investigating what happens to...
And then we say what it is. And in addition to that, no, I've gone and lost my point there. So I'm investigating what happens to plants when they are not watered.
My prediction, what I think will happen is that...
the plants that are not watered will die...
because...
plants have to have water to enable them to live.
To carry out an investigation, you must compare at least two variables, things which change or vary. For this investigation, I will compare
plants when they are watered and when they are not watered.
Yeah,
okay.
So a nice little year one thing to be doing, because it's simple and clear.
This is year one.
Yeah.
And then the last little bit, Pi, if you start reading the green.
However, it's important to make the test fair. To make the test fair, I must
make certain that all the other conditions are the same.
It's essential that all other conditions remain the same, because otherwise I wouldn't know if it was the
water
or something else that was making the difference.
Now, had we had a situation where one of you could have spoken to us, I would have found a scientist, as it were, and you could have come up with any investigation you liked in there, and we could see the fit. It's never actually failed. I've done this with people teaching science A-level. I haven't the faintest idea what they're talking about often in terms of the investigation, but it works because you've got the pattern of language in the head, and then you can go and apply it. And of course you can alter and amend the language over time, but the basic tune of scientific investigation is there. And that's what we're sort of talking about. So, Pi, if you can sum up.
So what we got is, in terms of talk to writing and subjects across the curriculum, going from, first of all, the faction business. We've had a lot of fun across the country in the last few years with the Manchester Ridgeback dragon, etc. And, of course, kids love it. But the serious thing is they're learning how to organise a report, introduce the reader to what you are about to tell them about, what information you're about to impart, and then organise it. And obviously, if it's an animal, we know we're going to say, well, what does it look like? Where do you find them? Habitat, etc. So it's learning. What they're learning is not about dragons, but they're learning how to structure different types of writing, and then beginning to acquire what we call the tools that you can use. And for non-fiction, very often those are the little words and phrases that we've been looking at today. And then once we've got that, we can then apply it across the curriculum. We're not doing dragons, but we've been to an otter sanctuary and we're writing about otters because we're 8 years old and we live in Cornwall and we've just been and found out about otters. I did that actually, an otter one in Pembrokeshire. There's obviously some sort of otter sanctuary somewhere or other there. And we went from dragons into using what we learned in terms of the boxing up, the toolkit, and they were writing about otters. And it worked really well because they had the structure, they had the language features, and they knew an enormous amount about otters. They were otter experts. So that's the first one, which is going from the imaginary stuff into applying it into real things. Then you've got the imitation, innovation, independent application. And that underpins all subjects, I think. That basic idea of I'll talk it through, I'll show you, I'll teach you. Now we'll have a go together, which is the innovation, and I'll be scaffolding and helping, and then you have a go on your own. And then I'll assess and see what you can do and what you can't do, and using that information, we'll go round the loop again. I'll show you what to do, and in this case, we're talking about a model text, but in different subjects, it would be slightly different, and then now we'll have a go together. Now you have a go at applying it on your own. So that underpins actually probably all learning in all subjects. And then the third one, which we've been thinking about in science, but would apply to maths. A lot of good work has been done on maths recently with this, but also music, PE. Julia's even done zookeeping. There's a qualification in zookeeping, and zookeeping has its own tune, its own set of vocabulary, but also its own generic phrasing, which you're going to need again and again and again. And you can see that very, very nicely happening in the science. And if you go to somewhere like Yew Tree, which is one of our great talk for writing training centres in Birmingham, the children in year 6, these kids come from poor backgrounds. Most of them arrive with no English when they come into school. In year 6, I have highly articulate children talking like scientists. It's quite extraordinary, really.
That will take us nicely to the next slide, Pi, because we're running out of time in our normal manner.
Well, there you go. I got fed up a while ago with people airily online saying that talk for writing didn't work and this, that and the other. And I thought, for goodness sake, give me strength. So what we decided we'd do, we've got, is it 15 schools?
This is based on 15, I think, yeah.
Yeah, 15 training schools. It's nearly 900 kids in year 6. And we thought, well, what we'll do is we'll compare our schools against our training centres against the national average. So that's what you can see. So back in 2016, when this is combined attainment, back in 2016, you can see we were about the national average, 2 percentage points below. Doesn't really mean anything. And that was because we all got caught out by the reading paper. We then did a lot of work on reading, and you can see in 2017 we were 8 percentage points above the national average. Then you can see we've stayed about 10% above, and the 3-year average is a nice, that's the final one with a yellow column, a nice 73%, and the national average back in the last 3 years, 63%. So we're significantly above the national average. And the amazing thing about that is we have one posh school, but all, because I needed to prove it worked in a posh school, all the other schools are in very, very challenging areas. So, the sort of school where 98% are EAL, so that the language, they really have to focus on it. Many of the schools serve very, very poor areas with all these sort of attendant issues that you get. So all we did there is I just wanted to say, if you do talk for writing well, if you work with our trainers, if you read the books, if you loiter with it and spend time over year after year after year, refining, improving and developing, it not only improves writing, it improves reading. The maths was similarly improved. And now we're seeing real gains genuinely across the whole of the curriculum because of the sort of the work that Julie has been sharing with us this afternoon in terms of science.
And that takes us on to the last slide. I can wave the book again. And obviously this book covers, you know, recount information, instruction, all the non-fiction text. It's got a lot of material across the curriculum, including the science stuff that we've seen today. As it was told you at the beginning, that all the film clips are now online, which makes it much, much easier to use. We really do hope you found it useful. I know we're going to have some questions now. I've just noticed in the chat box that I think it's Joe has said, "I'll never forget exoskeleton again." And really, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Making something engaging. Yes, and Pi's doing the action.
I've learned it as well.
Yes, I mean exoskeleton, and it was good fun. So I think we're over to questions now.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Thanks,
Thank you so much for such an engaging workshop. We actually don't have many questions at the moment. I think it's because lots of them have been answered.
They've gone asleep and died.
No, it was great to see all the engagement throughout. So I think maybe you have just answered all the questions we're talking about the approach so thoroughly. But we can give it, of course, a couple of minutes if people are happy to stay on the line.
There's a question coming.
You've got some questions
symbols used by the teacher? Yeah, go on, Laura, you take it away.
Just are the symbols used by the teacher in the video used universally in schools?
Pi, I think you're the best person to answer that.
When I started out, I thought I'd use Makaton or the other, or BSL. But very quickly I learned that it was much better to let teachers in a school decide for themselves, because to do with ownership, really. Otherwise, you're sitting around trying to learn, 45 different symbols, and you just go bonkers. So it's much better to have a common bank of ones for all the obvious things, like unfortunately, first, next, last, week, some common ones, and then just invent them with the kids. As long as the common generic ones are the same from class to class to class, you're okay. But the kids will engage with it. They'll make suggestions for you, and that just makes life much, much easier. A lot of schools photograph the actions, as you saw with the Selby Year 1 children for science. They photographed them, got them up on the wall. They're actually really mainly for the teacher, because it's the teacher who forgets, not the children. The teacher is often the issue.
Them on to the next class, don't they? So the pictures go up with the class, and then they add on whatever the next connectives are. There's some good questions coming in, so let's...
I was going to say that links well to Claire's question, which is, what are your first steps for getting this going? Do you focus on a year group, a subject?
The first thing to do is to read the book, which is a bit of
an
obvious.
Pi.
Like that.
But it's true, isn't it?
It's true. Yeah, you've got to get some confidence. And if you're working in, if you're teaching in a class, get it going in your class first of all. Use the website, join up for our free newsletters. There are a number of books there, but also quite a lot of resources. And ideally work with a trainer, because it's not something you can do quickly. I think it does, so it takes time, but as you can see, it's just, it's quite a big thing, really. If you can, once we all get back to normality, if you can work with a trainer, or ideally take the head to one of the training centres, and they're on the website, go and see what it looks like and chat with the teachers about the nitty-gritty. That often, because they can see the results of it, the effect of it, that often helps the head teacher think, yeah, this is something we need to be doing. But start small, start in your own class. Selby, for instance, I think most of our schools started across the curriculum, they started with science and gradually built experience in that. But if it was me, I'd get it going in maths and I'd get it going in science.
But the thing, I think the most important thing is to get it going in English, first of all, as it were, in non-fiction in English. When you've got a winner, as it were, whatever you're teaching across the curriculum, you can start seeing sort of how to do it. And there's quite a lot of examples in the Red Book to show you how. And if you go on to the website, we've got even more material there.
Yeah, it's interesting that, Julia, because people often ask me, I'm in year 3 and I'm doing a unit on whatever. And my reply, can you help me? And I say, yes, I can. Buy the book.
Yes.
There's a whole chapter on it. If it's non-fiction, there's a whole chapter on it with examples, with models, with activities. All you've got to do is take the model text and either make it simpler or make it more demanding according to your children. So a good starting point, I know it's my book and I would say this, but my goodness, if I'd had that book when I started teaching, I would have been 100 times more effective.
I mean, that's what I'm always saying to myself. There's so many, the words I don't know how to start, miss, were familiar to me.
Yeah.
And I used to think it was the kids' fault. I felt I've explained all this very clearly. I don't know what's up with them. But now I realise it was me because I hadn't internalised the text, the rhythm of the language, the key things. They didn't have it in their head, therefore they couldn't write it down. And I could be a really, really, really good teacher if I started again with these kids.
And it's actually worth saying, with the new online learning centres, which replaces the DVDs for those who have been faithful readers over the last 10 years, that has videos, but also has handouts and worksheets. So they're really the practical steps to start putting this whole framework into action.
Here's a question, Laura. I'm sorry to interrupt. If you've already got the book, can you access the online clips?
Do get in touch with us because we will be able to provide access for that. It's worth noting that the books have also been updated a little bit. Julia was working on them earlier this year, so there is a reflection of more recent policy for anyone who does want to get the latest editions, which of course does have these online learning centres. So it's a new way of accessing the book and also a light update for those who have been using the old faithful copies.
If it was Donald Trump, I'd tell you to buy the new book because it had been phenomenally updated and a million different things. But I'm going to be honest here and say there are some changes, but they're not massive changes. So if I'd already got the book, I would take up Laura's offer of being able to access online. I know I'm not supposed to say things like that to cut the sales, but I think this is the year, given that America seems to be the year for not being honest, at least a number of people there, it's the year for honesty.
So you're not going to say it's world beating.
I will definitely argue that because I think it is. I have never seen any books that would have helped me more in my teaching. I mean, I'm a secondary teacher, but if I'd have had this, I would have made such a better job of it rather than some of my lessons were a hash because I wasn't clear in what I was doing. This could make it clear. I love somebody called, what's her name? I've lost her. It's Emily. I've decided to love Emily. She says, what a wonderful, energetic webinar. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm voting for Emily.
Yes, and Penelope's been inspired by this as well. Claire has bought the book. And for those of you, hopefully you've seen that Afsana has shared a 20% discount code for those of you who don't have the book, and the links to all three of the Talk for Writing series that we've been publishing. So yeah,
if I can do a book plug, every teacher needs a copy, if you know what I mean. I keep on seeing these things online, people asking questions. I'm just starting doing such and such. Has anybody got this? And I'm thinking, it's in the red book. Why don't you just buy the red book? Now, they've probably got a copy of the red book in the school, but because they don't have their own copy, they don't sort of realise. So I do think anybody who's starting in the school, the best advice you can give them is, get hold of the books.
Most definitely. And on that shameless plug, we may have to wrap up, but thank you so much. I think Emily hits it exactly on the head when she says it was a wonderfully energetic webinar. I don't even have a background in teaching and was absolutely engaged.
You were almost interested.
I might have to retrain. I might have to go off this webinar and retrain. I'm feeling very inspired, so I'm sure everyone else is on the call. This will also be recorded, so we'll be sharing that with people. So thank you again.
Thank you. And if there's anybody still out there, we're waving goodbye. Yes.
Yeah, great. And also just to say, the resources that are on the Talk for Writing website are free. So if you want to go on and look at the resources on the Talk for Writing website that kind of go along with some of this, you're very welcome. Good stuff. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, you. Laura. Thanks all.
Cheers. See you
now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.